This is my 149th video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part is a return to my struggles with Hornby's models of Streamlined Coronation class locomotives. In part 143 I unboxed a Hornby Coronation Scott train pack from their 2012 catalogue, and I'm afraid I got quite frustrated that I couldn't get the loco model from that train pack to run on my Hornby layout at all without derailing. I had people suggesting in the comments that it was unreasonable of me to expect that loco model to run on my layout. I'm sorry, but that suggestion is utter nonsense. Hornby sells the model, clearly stating in their sales literature and in the documentation supplied with the model itself that it will run on Hornby track with second radius curves. I was trying to run it on Hornby track with only third radius curves. I never even tried it on second radius, and it simply wouldn't run at all without almost immediately derailing. I might also point out that I run something over 60 other models on that same track without derailing problems. So I wasn't at all happy that the Streamlined Coronation from the 2012 train pack derailed every time I tried to run it. I did some work on that model, bending the loco to tender drawbar so that all of the tender wheels actually sat on the rails, which they didn't as the model came, bending the bar connecting the bogie to the chassis to try to get the bogie wheels to sit on the rails better, and adding some weight to the bogie. I showed the results of those attempts in part 144. I managed to get that model to run around the third radius circuit on my Hornby layout in an anti-clockwise direction without derailing, but it still wouldn't run in the normal for that circuit clockwise direction without derailing. At that point I put the issue aside, but I wasn't giving up. I ordered 2 other versions of the blue Streamlined Coronation class from Hattons, both Hornby models, both from earlier toolings, one from the previous tooling that came out around 2001 or so, and one from the very old tooling from 1984. Those 2 models have now arrived. I also have a crimson Streamlined Coronation from 2006, which it turns out is slightly different in setup from any of the blue ones. So in this video I'll be looking at the new models and trying to run them, and I'll also be revisiting the 2012 version from the train pack and the 2006 crimson one. So overall we'll be looking at 4 models of the Streamlined Coronation class, all somewhat different in tooling or operating mechanism, spread over about 30 years or a bit more. Here are the additional models that I acquired as they arrived. I bought both of these from Hattons, and they arrived in a single package. As an overseas buyer, I'm located in Canada. I've always been very happy with Hattons. They've always treated me fairly, packed well and dispatched promptly, and their customer service is excellent. I bought these models as representing, so far as I understood things, the 2 major earlier toolings of the Streamlined Coronation class put out by Hornby. I was hoping that between all of my purchases I should be fairly sure of actually getting a blue Streamlined Coronation class that would operate reliably. Here are the ends of the boxes showing what I purchased from Hattons. R685 is a very old model from 1984. This would obviously not be expected to have all of the fine details of the later toolings, but I also honestly had most confidence that it would actually run properly. The other model, R2271, is from 2002, so from the tooling that was released around the turn of the century. I really expected this to be essentially the same as the crimson Streamlined Coronation from 2006 that I have, and I think they do reflect the same body tooling, but it turned out that there were some differences in operating mechanism, which I will cover later in this video. Here are the 2 new acquisitions out of their boxes but still in their styrofoam blocks. The 1984 model is at top, the 2002 at the bottom. For some reason, the 2002 version came with a fireman figure and a broken NEM coupling in the box. The coupling is particularly odd as this model doesn't have NEM pockets. I immediately got both of the new models onto my Hornby layout. The 1984 version ran with absolutely no derailing issues whatsoever. Since it ran with no hint of derailing on the third radius circuit in both directions, anti-clockwise and clockwise, I moved it over to the second radius circuit where it also ran with no sign of derailing. However, nothing in life is perfect, I guess, and the 1984 model did have some pickup issues. More on those in a bit. The 2002 model, as it came out of the box, wouldn't run at all. It instantly derailed as soon as it went round any curve, so I have to wonder what the previous owner did with it. When I examined it closely, especially with respect to the front bogie, the reason that it wouldn't go round curves without derailing was obvious. The front bogie was barely reaching down to the rails at all when the driving wheels were railed properly. If the driving wheels were placed beside the rails rather than on them, then the front bogie would sit on the rails properly, but with the driving wheels railed, the front bogie wheels barely touched the rails, and the back bogie wheels were completely raised off the rails, so of course the bogie instantly came off the track as soon as the model encountered a curve. I modified the bending of the bogie mounting bar to get the bogie to sit lower and parallel to the rails. In this case, it seems that I got it right the first time, as after my modification of the bogie mounting bar, the model ran on the third radius circuit of my Hornby layout in both directions without derailing. More on the whole issue of bending the bogie mounting bars later. I want to just run through some of the details as to how the various models are set up. Then I'll finish with an overall comparison before ending with some running video. This is the loco-to-tender connection of the newest model from the 2012 train pack. This is essentially Bachmann's stupid system of plug-in wires coupled with a pin on the tender that must be fitted into a hole in the metal drawbar from the loco. And of course the pin keeps coming out when the model is handled. Given that this is one of Bachmann's worst ideas, and pretty much everyone has said so, I can't imagine why Hornby have decided to copy it. Though I will admit that this Hornby connection works better than most of the Bachmann examples that I've encountered. However, there was a problem with this connection on my particular model. The drawbar from the loco was mounted so high that when coupled up and railed, it lifted the front wheels of the tender off the rails. This provided another trigger for derailing. I fixed this problem by bending the back end of the loco drawbar down a bit, as can be seen here. The pony truck wheels on the 2012 model have no flanges. I believe that Hornby did this in order to allow the pony truck as a whole to be more accurately modelled without causing derailing problems. All of the earlier versions do have flanges on the pony truck wheels, but I guess the body of the pony truck must be made smaller than truly accurate to allow enough movement with flanges on the rails. The absence of flanges in this model is not very obvious when it's running, much less so, for example, than with the latest Hornby tooling of the Princess Royal class, where the flangeless pony truck overhangs the rails on corners in a way that's very obvious, if you look at it. This is the bogie of the 2012 version. This picture was taken after I'd already had a couple of tries modifying the mounting of this bogie, and I'd added a weight, which you can see here above the front wheels. That got the model to the point where it would run round the third radius circuit of my Hornby layout anti-clockwise without derailing, but it still derailed when I tried to run it round that circuit clockwise, which would be the more normal direction with the loco proceeding on the left-hand track, as usual for British operations. I did have one more go at modifying the bogie mounting bar on this model, and I think that I've now actually got it to the point where it will go round the third radius circuit clockwise without derailing. At least for a while. I'm not sure that I'm terribly confident that it'll never derail. Here's a picture where I've labelled the two bends in the bogie mounting bar. Adjusting this bar correctly is very fiddly and seems to be something that the Hornby factory in China simply can't do at all, based on my experience. All of the models of the Streamlined Coronation that I acquired having this type of bogie, except for the oldest, that is, the 1984 tooling, all derailed because of incorrectly set up bogies when I got them. That is to say, this bar was not installed in such a way that the bogie rested properly on the tracks and stayed on the track on curves. Bend A needs to be bent down far enough that the bogie sits solidly on the rails, but not bent down so far that the bogie lifts the driving wheels off the rails. Then bend B needs to be bent so that the bogie sits evenly on the rails, that is to say, so that the weight is distributed evenly between the front and back wheels of the bogie. Getting the combination of bends just right isn't simple, and requires generally, I found, a certain amount of trial and error. Bend them till it looks about right, try it and see how it performs on the rails, and if it doesn't work quite right, bend them a bit more. Another issue with these bogies is that the wheels are plastic with metal tyres, the tyres being pushed on from the back, that is, from the inside of the wheels. The tyres are just a push fit and they tend to come off, slipping inwards, resulting in overly narrow gauging of the flanges of the bogie, which will cause derailing. So it's necessary to check these wheels pretty much every time you run one of these models, and if the tyres aren't properly pushed on the wheels, push them properly into place before trying to run the model. This is the loco to tender connection of the 2002 model. No wires, but two sets of contacts on the loco drawbar. The upper set of contacts press on the metal plate above the pin on the tender, and the lower set of contacts press on the pin itself, which is made of metal, even though it rather looks plastic. The 2006 Crimson version that I have uses this same type of loco to tender connection. Given that the connection provides for two paths of electrical contact between loco and tender, I expected that this model would have tender pickups. But it does not. It picks up from all 6 loco driving wheels, but not at all from the tender. So I suppose that the loco to tender electrical connections must be just to allow for mounting DCC in the tender. Oddly enough, the 2006 Crimson version that I have, although it does use this same type of loco to tender connection, picks up differently. That model picks up from one rail via the 3 loco driving wheels on one side, and from the other rail via the 3 tender wheels on that side. Go figure, and that was made in 2006, 4 years after this one, which was made in 2002. Here's that connection disconnected. These easily disconnected connections make handling and railing the loco and tender easier, but they do create a potentially weak point of electrical contact, and the contacts must be kept clean for the models to function properly. Here's the pony truck on the 2002 model. As noted, the wheels are flanged. I guess the truck is less realistically modelled than on the later version, although that isn't really obvious to me. This 2002 model has the same type of bogie mounting as the 2012 version. When I got it, this was the worst adjusted of them all, completely incapable of going round any curve without immediately derailing. However, it seems that my first attempt at adjusting the bends of the bogie mounting bar on this model worked quite well. You do have to be careful when bending the mounting bar, as it's riveted to the centre of the bogie, and you mustn't apply levering force to that rivet or you'll break it, because it's not very strong. As with the 2012 model, the fit of the metal tyres on the bogie wheels needs to be constantly checked. This is the loco to tender connection of the oldest 1984 model. In this case, just one electrical connection between loco and tender is provided. This model, of course, doesn't have a DCC socket, being older than DCC, basically. This model, like my Crimson model from 2006, picks up from the loco driving wheels on one side and the tender wheels on the other side. However, the pickup on this model is unfortunately its weak point. It only picks up from 2 of the 3 loco driving wheels on one side, and the pickups themselves are not all that reliable. And of course, these contacts on the drawbar must be kept clean for the model to operate properly. Here's that connection separated. The contacts and the pin will need fairly regular cleaning to keep things working. Again, there are flanges on the pony truck wheels. The less than accurate modelling of the pony truck is fairly obvious on this model. The bogie on this model is still suspended from the front of the chassis by a bar, but the point of suspension is lower to the tracks, and the bending of the bar is much simpler, with the front and back sections being parallel. I didn't modify this bogie mounting at all, and I have experienced no derailing issues whatsoever with it, even on second radius curves. Here you can see one of the loco pickups on the 1984 model. These are its weak point. There are only two of them on the front and back driving wheels on one side, and they don't really very reliably contact the inside of the wheels. Here's the other one of those contacts on the back driving wheel. With only two wheels drawing power from the rail on this side and the pickups not being terribly reliable, the model has a tendency to stutter over points and even sometimes to stop entirely, which is a real pity, as otherwise it seems to be the most reliable runner of them all. This 1984 model is driven by a ring-field motor in the tender, so the loco wheels are just rotating passively. I've done my best to clean and adjust the contacts and pickups and to clean the wheels on my model, but I haven't serviced the motor yet, and I probably should. After all, it's nearly 40 years old. Here are all four of the models on my storage shelf. The 1984 model is at the right, and you can certainly see that it's somewhat simpler. Next to it is the other newly arrived model from 2002, then the 2012 model from the train pack, with the 2006 Crimson model on the right. The 1984 model is definitely somewhat cruder, but I think it does still capture the spirit of the original. Here's something of a schematic comparison of the four versions. I've put red lines on the wheels that pick up. As you can see, the latest 2012 version certainly has the best pickup arrangement, picking up from 12 wheels in all 6 tender wheels and all 6 loco driving wheels. The 2002 version picks up from all 6 loco driving wheels, but not at all from the tender. The 2006 version picks up from 3 loco driving wheels on one side and 3 tender wheels on the other side. The 1984 version is the weakest, picking up from 3 tender wheels on one side but only 2 loco wheels on the other side. The 1984 version is the only one that has really shown pickup issues in operation for me, although the pickup arrangements on the 2006 version would almost certainly lead to issues when trying to pass over a set of points from one power zone to another. All of the models are loco drive except for the one from 1984, which is driven by a ring-field motor in the tender. I've ticked the bogie on the 1984 version, as that is the only one that worked without derailing as it came to me. All of the others had bogies that persistently derailed and needed fiddly adjustment to fix that problem, and honestly I don't have all that much confidence in them even after the adjustments. As noted, all the models have flanged pony truck wheels except for the most recent 2012 version. I've marked the number of electrical connections between loco and tender. The 2000 and 2006 versions have 2 drawbar connections. The 1984 has just 1 for power from the rail picked up on the loco. The 2012 version connects loco and tender via plug-in wires with 4 strands. The 1984 version has traction tyres on 2 of the tender wheels on the non-picking up side. None of the other versions use traction tyres. So now I'll finish with some running video of the models on my Hornby layout. I think I have now finally adjusted things so that all of the models will run without derailing in either direction on the third radius circuit. However, I have to say that I'm still more confident in the resistance to derailing of the 1984 version, but unfortunately that version tends to have some pickup issues. Okay, this is the version of the Streamlined Coronation class the blue version that was in my previous video. From the tooling of around 2010 specifically, it came to me in a train pack from the 2012 catalogue. so it's the most recent tooling that I have. I almost wasn't going to include it in this video because I was hoping the others would perform better, and I'd more or less given up on improving this one. But I did have one more go at it. I'd already, in my previous video, bent the tender drawbar so all of the tender wheels would sit properly on the track, and I'd rebent the bogie mounting bar so the bogie would sit properly on the track as best as I could, and I did weight to the bogie. And I got it to the point where, at that point, it would go around the circuit it's on now, the third radius circuit on this layout, anti-clockwise, but not clockwise, because it would derail on the points there. Whoops. It would derail on those points there, going round clockwise. It would hit those diverging points and it would derail there. But I've had a go at it. I've had another go. I've had the bogie off again and rebent that bogie mounting bar yet again, adding basically more to each bend, bending the first bend down a bit more and the second bend up a bit more to try and push the bogie more down levelly onto the track. And I have some hope we may be able to get it round the outer circuit clockwise now. I got it round about 3 or 4 times before turning the camera on. So let's see if it will go round. It may not, it may just derail again. We'll see. But let's try. That's about 60% power. So we're not going too fast. We've still got the bogie on at the moment. Well, we'll know, because if the bogie comes off, it'll derail at the points for sure. The question is, can the bogie stay on? This was my 3rd attempt at restructuring that bogie. I did not change anything about the weight, but I did take the bogie off completely and rebend that sort of double bend metal bar that mounts the bogie. Well, we got round several times. Next time it comes round, maybe we'll halt it and just have a close look at its wheels again. It is just catching a fence there. I think I keep moving that fence out the way, and it keeps coming forward because this does go a long way out. Yep. I don't know to what degree you can see, but that bogie is in fact still on the track. So I wouldn't say 100% I'm sure I've solved it, but after 3 attempts at restructuring the bogie, and I also did I bent the tender drawbar down because the tender wheels weren't sitting evenly on the track either when I got it. After 3 attempts at restructuring the bogie mounting, I may have actually got this to the point where it will now go round this layout without derailing, at least on the 3rd radius curve. Now on the inner track there, I've got the oldest one, the one from about the 80s or something. That, he's on the inner 2nd radius track, so I've got to actually give him backwards power to make him go around that clockwise. This one, of course it's always famous last words, I say that and it may prove me a liar, but this one so far I've run quite extensively and I've had absolutely no trouble with it derailing. Hasn't derailed once. That's why I got it on the 2nd radius curve. Now I started it on the 3rd radius curve, I ran it both clockwise and anti-clockwise around the 3rd radius circuit. It showed no problem derailing, so then I actually ran it across the points onto the 2nd radius circuit, and this is on the 2nd radius circuit. So I haven't had, this has a totally different bogie design, which seems to be a much superior bogie design basically, and I've had no trouble at all with this one derailing. I do have had some problems with its pickups. You may see that as it goes over the points there, oh, in fact, famous last words, it actually stopped dead on the points. I was going to say it may hesitate on the points, it in fact stopped dead on the points. yeah, I have had some pickup problems with it. Can I get to it and poke it? Maybe. It has some pickup problems. Its pickups are not the best. Ooh, oh, I put the power on the wrong way. I have to put backwards power on it if I want it to go forwards when it's going that way. I have had, you know, I knew I was having pickups problems with it because it picks up from 2 loco wheels. What the heck? It picks up from 2 loco wheels from one track. Sorry, got it going a bit fast now. So I've had no derailing problems with it, but it doesn't go over the points very well because it's supposed to pick up from 2 loco wheels. And frankly, the pickup on one of them's a bit iffy as well, so sometimes I think it's only picking up from one rail from 1 loco wheel. So, much better in terms of staying on the rails, much better. It's now run, you know, it's run both ways on the 3rd radius circuit, it's now running on the 2nd radius circuit, hasn't derailed a single time, but it does have some pickup issues because its pickup is much more limited than the later toolings. So I don't know. I mean, in some ways I feel more confident about this than either of the later ones, in that at least, you know, so long as it can pick up, it runs quite nicely without derailing, but, you know, if I slow it down, it will quite likely get stuck on those points again. It didn't that time, but I've done what I can. I did work on it to clean the wheels, clean the pickups, clean the connection between the loco and the tender to try to mitigate the pickup problems, but it's not a very good pickup arrangement. It's picking up from 3 wheels on the tender on one side and 2 wheels on the loco on the other side, so, you know, it's just not a terribly good pickup arrangement. So it's not surprising that it exhibits some pickup problems. Of course, it's the simplest in terms of the actual tooling. It's the shiniest in terms of the finish. I'm not sure that I mind that too much. And it's simpler in various ways. I mean, it doesn't have, you know, separate metallic safety valves like that one does. There are various points of improved detail. I have to admit I haven't been focusing on the detail very much because I've been focusing so much on trying to get these confounded things to run without derailing. Not him, well, him I've been trying to get to run without pickup problems, but the 2 later toolings, it's been, the focus has been, they've had no pickup problems because they both pick up more generally than him, but I've been fighting to get them to run without derailing. Okay, now this one that I've got on the 3rd radius circuit now is the 3rd version. Well, in addition to the other 2 I was filming before, it's actually the middle version in terms of time. It's the version that came out around 2000 and 2001, so it's the version before the version in the train pack, but considerably after the more shiny version that's on the inner circuit. Now this, I bought used from Hatton's, as I did the shiny one, the older one from the 80s or 1990 or whatever. When it came out of the box, it wouldn't even get round a single curve. It would derail almost instantly as soon as it tried to go round a curve, because the bogie wasn't remotely sitting on the track. The angle of the bogie mounting bar was totally wrong, and the bogie wheels were just not sitting on the track at all, so it instantly derails. So, as with the other later one, I've bent the bogie bar. The older one doesn't have a bogie bar of that mounting type. Its bogie is mounted totally differently. So let's try this one. We shall see. It's got the silly type of bogie, so I certainly wouldn't say that it's guaranteed not to derail, but I have run it round quite a few times without derailing since I modified the bogie mounting bar. Same thing I did before. Well, I didn't put weight on this one. I did not add weight to the bogie on this one. I just rebent the mounting bar to try and get the bogie to actually sit levelly on the rails.
with both the front wheels and the back wheels of the bogie sitting properly on the track, which they certainly weren't doing when I got it. And I think you certainly can't assume they're going to be if you buy one of these. You know, I don't think Hornby ships them out of the factory with the bogies mounted properly so they actually sit on the tracks, not on my experience anyway. So this is the intermediate tooling, as I say. This is the tooling from around the turn of the century. It has better pickups than the old one. It picks up on both sides. It's loco-driven, not tender-driven. The old one is tender-driven. The old one's driven by a ring-filled motor and a tender. This one is loco-driven. It picks up from both sides, on both the loco and the tender. Doesn't have wires between the loco and the tender. It has double contacts on the pin, the drawbar pin. The contacts are on the drawbar, and they contact the plate above the drawbar pin and the drawbar pin itself. And yes, I think this one is going round. Famous last words, we'll see. But so far, since I rebent the tender mounting bar, the bogie mounting bar, that is, I'm sorry, I did not do anything to the tender mounting bar of this one. I bent the bogie mounting bar to make the bogie wheels actually sit square on the track as best as I could. Only once. I've only had one go at bending the bogie on this one. It took me 3 tries to bend the bogie on the newer one, but this one, I think, famous last words, but I think I've got it right the first time. I think I've got its bogie wheels to sit down on the track. Bottom line, honestly, I'm still more confident. Whoops, I'm trying to stop him here. I'm still more confident in the running in a way of the oldest one. Trying to see that bogie. Yeah, that bogie's still on the track. And that's after a few times round. So it seems that with that bending of the bogie bar, I've got him to run as well. I have to say, if it comes down to it, I'd be more confident in the oldest one, because that's shown no tendency to derail. I had to fight with the others to get them to stop derailing. But of course the pickups on the old one are not so great. And I should probably get its take its tender apart and service its ring-filled motor as well. It's an old ring-filled motor, and I have not serviced it since I received it. I just worked on the pickups and the loco to tender connection so far on the old one. So we'll see. Well, getting some improvement. I'm getting all 3 of them to run round now, at least for a while, without derailing. Still getting some contact problems with the older one, and I'm still rather nervous that the newer ones might derail, but they haven't yet.